for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away, like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.
And talking about the doctor, here he is. And what do we got here? First comment was up there nice and early. Dizzy, g'day, fantastic. Was no, Brucey was back, so it was only last week, and you were off here in my state in South Australia doing your civic duty of fighting bushfires over here in our state down at Deep Creek, nice little area, the part of the Fleurieu Peninsula, Bruce, but you didn't probably get to enjoy it as much, I guess. So there you go.
Yep.
Space is fake. Okay. There we go. Ice Wall. Bill, g'day. Good to see you. Big Booty, good to see you as well. So, Bruce, as people can clearly hear, and I reckon you'll probably cover a bit of the fires, I reckon. You'll probably have a little bit in that. And but as if people can hear, I'm a little bit under the weather, a little bit of a loogie, and the immune system has taken a bit of a hit, and burning the candle at both ends and all that sort of stuff. So you'll be happy to know I won't be doing a massive intro, and as always, Bruce is really happy about that. But the only thing is, though, Bruce, is that unfortunately maybe people that choose to jump in half an hour late might miss some, so they'll have to watch it, replay it. But people won't be able to watch it, Bruce, on Facebook any longer, Bruce, because I got totally nuked off Facebook. So those of you who are on Rumble, watching on Rumble, and you may have a Facebook account, if you want to share the link to the stream from Rumble, or we're streaming to Rumble and YouTube, and I'm waiting to find out what's happening with X. For some reason, that's not streaming there, but we'll see. So yeah, if you want to help out and you want to get Bruce's message out past the censors who decided to nuke me off Facebook, and I really don't know why, because they don't give you those reasons, Bruce. They don't tell you. They just say broken community guidelines, and they don't actually go into detail about what it is. So there you go. So no more streaming to Facebook. So apologise if people out there know people who regularly watch off Facebook, but you also know them, happen to know them in the Rumble community. Send them a message and tell them to come on over to either Cafe Locked Out or my Faith Culture Politics channel there, Bruce. So that's me, and yes, at the moment I can see I'm not really streaming to X yet either, because my account's still under review there. I did bite the bullet and get the cheapest option just so I can keep getting the word out. So waiting for that to be approved again to stream back on X again. But anyway, there we go. Thanks for those that are joining on Rumble at the moment.
So I left you unsupervised for 5 days and this happens.
I know, right? It's pretty crazy. I mean, you just, dad goes away and kids will play and get themselves in trouble. I don't know. That's really strange. But anyway, I do want to say, obviously keep it down though. I did share something that was it was a breakdown on a book from, I think, the 1940s or even earlier, or 60s, I think it might have been, Tragedy and Hope. I think I shared the link to you. Tragedy and Hope is a massive book. I think it's about 1,400 pages or something. But there's a guy that's broken it down and put it into a bit of an audio library. I did share a bit of that, and I did share the Fat Emperor, Ivor Cummins stuff from him on Facebook. I shared that. I think I sent that through to you, the stuff that I shared, and just to say, I'm not sure whether they call it the network, the people that pull the strings behind the scenes, the international bankers that have been going for over 100 years, maybe just didn't like that I was sharing that sort of content on Facebook, but they did. But then again, I was also critical of the Labor Party, calling them socialists, and I got called out on a couple of comments, and people said that they were going to report me, and I thought, well, that's pretty funny because it does actually have it as in their documents that they're Democratic Socialist Party. That's the links. The Labor Party is Democrat Socialist. So I don't know why I triggered people with that, Bruce. But anyway, there it is. Onwards and upwards. We still have other platforms. They haven't totally nuked us yet. So even though Facebook has nuked us, which is funny because the thing is, I was making a little bit of that. There was a fee obviously on Facebook to get verified, and I was making enough off my posts to cover that as well. So it was actually, I was growing quite well, which is quite interesting because you see, obviously, you hear accounts that when they're growing, they kind of keep an eye on it. And so clearly, I don't know whether it was over the target with something, but I look at stuff. You look at, Sam Bamford, Two Worlds Collide, the type of stuff, he doesn't hold back on any of his stuff, and his content's out there. So just really makes me wonder what it was that decided to nuke me. But anyway, that's me, brother. Over to you.
Yep, flak always heaviest over the target.
Yes, absolutely. Funny about that. 95,
right.
Bruce. Episode 95. 5 away from the big ton.
Yeah, we said we'd do 50, didn't we?
Yeah, nearly doubled it now, mate. Nearly doubled it.
All right. So what's on the menu for this week? So we've got 3 updates there. So last show, we sort of mused and pondered what did happen to the Bankstown nurses. The 2 who went, if any Jews come into the hospital, I send them to Johanna. So I'm going to give you, I've done a little dive into that, what happened to them. So that's worth looking at. Bit of a problem for the post-Bondi weapons bans because it turns out everyday items can be used as weapons. And I'm going to give you an example of multiple everyday items being used as weapons. So that would seem to be a workaround for the gun bans, doesn't it? And also last show, we looked at the historical temperature records, which were recorded in northern Victoria a fortnight ago. And at the point we went, well, they're only historical if you ignore what was printed in the papers in the 1930s, which showed they actually printed higher temperatures. And the answer to that is, well, the Bureau of Meteorology actually fudges the numbers to support the narrative. And I've got another story this week about another way that the bomb has been fudging the records to push the present day temperatures higher than they really are. So it looks like the world really is warming. We've got the Not Easy Being Green segment, and had tip to Danny, who sent me a video, I think from China, which shows a relatively innocuous EV crash, just slides off the road, really minor impact, which is then followed by a catastrophic fire very quickly, which probably at least severely burned, if not ultimately killed the 3 rear seat occupants. So I'll show you that.
And good day, Danny. It's always good to see Danny watching.
Yep. And we've got an upside to global warming because, global warming's all doom and gloom, isn't it? And, well, this week, Joe Nova reported, well, there's actually a benefit. And the benefit is that the northern parts of the world, which are bloody cold, appear to be benefiting from rising temperatures. And the example they're using is that the northern, what they call boreal forests, so the cold pine forests in the high northern latitudes, they're expanding in area as the world apparently warms. So there's an upside. And isn't it ironic that a couple of the countries which are really the strongest EV and global warming zealots, and I'm thinking of Norway and Canada, these are both countries that could do with a bit of warming.
Yeah.
Funny about I can understand if Australia went, well, we're warm enough, but Norway and Canada, come on. So
I'm just wondering, Bruce, though, I'm just wondering if Norway and Canada actually have got nuclear. I think Canada has nuclear too, don't they?
My memory says no, and Norway I know has
Mm.
got hydropower,
Right.
and of course North Sea oil. But yeah, Norway's interesting. Norway often boasts that 90+% of their cars sold last year were EVs. But what they don't tell you is that that's because of massive government subsidies. They make it almost impossible to buy a petroleum fueled car. So where do the Norwegians get the money to do that? Well, they get it by selling oil from the North Sea. So they're offshoring their CO2 emissions, a bit like we do here in Australia. We send a shed ton of coal to China and they burn it. But we feel virtuous because we're not burning it here. Same.
Yeah, but you'd have to say that Canada, like even through COVID, like Canada is probably a very left-leaning country, and they've got lots of they're talking about the climate and everything, but they've actually, I've just looked it up, Bruce, while you were talking. 15% of their electricity is generated through 19 commercial reactors. Now this is Canada, yet our country here in Australia won't even lift a ban on nuclear and even contemplate small nuclear reactors, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And young Will from Nuclear Australia is doing an amazing job trying to advocate for that to change.
Yeah, well, great. Thanks. I wasn't aware of that. And isn't it an indication of hypocrisy? If the Greens really believed that CO2 was killing the planet, nuclear is the only possible solution. The only genuine emissions-free power source. But as they said, they don't want a green environment, they want communism. So that's why they can't have that.
Yeah, Australia is definitely a test case for the reinvention of communism, that's for sure.
Okay, we've got a little bit in health this week with a story about low GI breakfasts for diabetics, where they look at, okay, what can you eat as breakfast that's going to raise your blood sugar the least? And they've got all sorts of quinoa and cereals and so forth. But they're missing the obvious thing, which is one, bacon and eggs would be better to raise your BSL less than any cereal. And the other thing, of course, is, well, what about no breakfast? If you think low GI is important, what about no GI? And I'll talk to my experience with breakfasts and otherwise.
Yeah.
In finance, it's hold on to your wallets time, because you probably noticed in the last week or 10 days, the media has been publishing article after article after article telling us that the capital gains tax levied on investment properties is too low, and in fact that the 25% rate after 1 year is our discount, and the real rate should be 50%, which it is for less than that. So this doesn't come out of the air. This has obviously been seeded out as a trial balloon by government, and Treasurer Chalmers is just trying to see how much pushback he's going to get if he suggests that. And rather like a year ago when Labor was saying that they were going to have an unrealised capital gains tax, which is a horrendous example of theft, they eventually got enough pushback that they dropped that idea, which is great. Okay.
Yep.
Diversity divides. Poor old Bob Katter was thrown out of Parliament for suggesting that immigrants should integrate. And the Liberals have deposed their Labor light leader, Susan Ley, and replaced her with Angus Taylor. And he's come out immediately and said that immigration and cost of living are going to be his main priorities. So yeah, maybe as you know, Liberals dead to me, but maybe they've heard a little bit what the base wants, and they're maybe going to respond somewhat. Righto.
No, Jacques, I have over it, so I have not returned my tenor vocal cords. But someone did tell me that I could probably sing better with this voice, but anyway, there you go.
Look, if I didn't know you better, when I first heard you speak tonight, my first thought was cigarettes and bourbon.
Yeah, I gave cigarettes up 30 odd years ago, and the bourbon's all right. Don't mind the old straight bourbon. That's not a bad thing.
Righto. All right, let's start with an apology. And I do apologise to everybody for missing last week. And it's the first week I have missed. But I think I had a reasonable excuse for doing it. And the reason was I went over to South Australia with a CFA, Country Fire Authority strike team. We took
Rebecca Hewitt tried to do really well, Bruce, to stand you up. Like, she did interview quite well and she performed really well. I did get a lot of positive feedback from Rebecca, who's a Legislative Council candidate for One Nation here in South Australia. So she was quite, people were responsive, so it was all right. But obviously not the real Bruce Paix, but I had to do my best to try and get someone fairly good looking on there.
Would Rebecca be interested in hosting the show going forward?
She'd probably do a ton load better, buddy. She'd probably do well. She doesn't have a tenor voice, but she'd probably do a cracking good job, I reckon. I don't want her on this show hosting with you. I actually want her elected in the Legislative Council because she's a real firecracker, and I reckon she'll bloody give Malinowskis and his government a real good grunt for their money. So yeah. But anyway, back onto you.
Look, and you mentioning that, I'm pleased to say that One Nation has somehow suddenly exploded onto the scene. And I think they're putting a real wind up the Liberal-Labor duopoly, and high time too. And in fact, I rang my federal MP again today, who's one of the few Nationals MPs, because I live in the bush. And again, I told her that whilst I thought the new Liberal leader was better than the old Liberal leader, I didn't have any intention of returning to that fold. They've completely destroyed themselves in my mind forever. But I did say to her, look, now that the coalition's got back together, the Nationals need to accept the fact that they are a minor coalition partner at best. And to be honest, if they don't want to be an irrelevant coalition partner, they should be in coalition with One Nation, not with the Liberals. The Liberals are dead. If the Nationals are going to survive, they do well to align themselves with One Nation because there's a lot more common ground between them than there is in the old wet Liberals.
Exactly right. And should I say then that here in the state that you used to live, Bruce, and their former member is still part of that Liberal Party. And now he was an ex-COVID tyrant, Josh Teague, and he was still contesting his seat. And I hope some really good candidates stand up against him and he doesn't retain his seat.
Yeah, well, first time around, it was quite a close thing. And I went down to the polling booth in Echunga and canvassed for Marcus Nickerton's wife, who was running for one of the independent freedom parties. And I'm pleased to say at that booth, she got double the votes that she got at any other booth. And I sort of like pat myself on the back for saying that I approached people, everyone who came up to the booth, I said, if you believe in freedom and bodily integrity, vote for this person. So there you go.
There you go. Yep.
And as for Josh Teague, I have sympathy for Josh Teague. I think if you look back through his history, he was a blue blood. He's brought up through Adelaide University, law degree, and installed in a safe Liberal seat. And then along came the pandemic, and frankly, he just wasn't up to it. He wasn't mature enough to stand up for freedom values. He just rolled over and went along with it because he was weak. So I don't forgive him for what he did. He participated in the destruction of the country and my children's future. But I know why he did it, and that's because he was just weak and not up to it. And that's true of
like many. Well, that's true of so many.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
All right, but back to our apology. So, last week I answered the call. They put out a request in Western Vic and said we need a strike team for South Australia. And normally I wouldn't do that because, frankly, I'm getting too old for that stuff. But of the skill set they were looking for, I sort of uniquely ticked the boxes because this is our task force. And 4 of those 5 trucks are heavy tankers called 4-4s. And they have some quirks in their driving. They're full of 4-wheel drive gear with diff locks, front, rear, centre diff lock, front brakes, like handbrake on the front and rear end, etc., etc., etc. And my brigade here in Western Vic's got one of these trucks. We didn't take it over, but we got one. So I was already authorised to drive it, and that's not a particularly common skill because these are quite new. And also, obviously, going back to the Fleurieu, this was an area that I was familiar with. I've done firefighting there before. So, yeah, I thought on this one occasion I will stick my hand up and go. And so, yeah, apologies to people. I thought it was justified on that occasion. So that's our task force down at Yankalilla. And a strike team usually consists of 5 trucks, which is what we've got there. And in the staging area at Yank, there were, 30 or 40 country fire trucks from South Australia as well. And interestingly, South Australia is one of the few places in the world that's been using white trucks for a long time. And the reason for that is twofold. One is that they're a bit better heat reflectivity. So if you're taking them up to a hot fire, which country fire trucks do all the time, your city fire trucks tend not to get baked. But your country fire trucks are usually running down the edge of a fire, and they do get singed and scorched at times. So the white paint apparently is better heat reflective. And the other thing is that the white paint is more visible at night, apparently, than the red, which in darkness turns into a very dark colour. So if ever you're wondering why the South Australian truck's white and pretty much everywhere else in the world is red, that's the reason, and I support that. I think that was a good idea. Now, interestingly, other fire services around the world are slowly adopting the white trucks idea. And again, probably based on the fact that they're more visible, easier to see at night. So that's an example in the US, and various UK fire services have changed to white pumpers as well. Now, having seen that, I did remember that the South Australians have been trialling another colour scheme, and that's what you see here. So they've got a white truck, but they've got all sorts of rainbow motifs on it, which apparently they're very proud of. I do not know what the science is regarding fire safety for that colour scheme, but the CFS is apparently pretty keen on it.
Yeah, well, I don't know what made them adopt that, Bruce. It's just really strange.
Yeah, I think they were just proud of it. I think they were just
very, very proud of it. Was it part of the Pride float? But anyway, there you go.
All right, so they'll just whip through a few pictures of what I did get up to in South Australia. So that's a typical picture of the fire ground. So the Deep Creek fire was, top of my head, between 6,000 and 8,000 hectares. So a big fire, but tiny by Grampian standards, where our fire last year was 130,000. And as you can see there, a whole lot of burnt ground, a gully, and off to the south you can see the sea. So what do we do at Deep Creek? So for a start, we did a lot of drafting water out of dams. Drafting is where you suck water out of a dam. And this is one of the key differences between town fire services and bush fire services. In a town, you generally got a hydrant you can just plug into to get water. You don't have to go anywhere. In the bush, you have to refill multiple times, and that involves setting up equipment and sucking out of a dam, which is technically more difficult than you might think. It's not a task that any of us enjoy, but we certainly got practice doing that over the last few days.
Wow, do you suck up any fish, Bruce?
No, we got strainers on the end. We might get the odd yabby, but we have strainers on the end of the inlet to stop that happening.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Now, we were in SA a week or more into this fire, so we weren't there, fighting the fire front day one, as I've shown you pictures of before. So a lot of what we did was what's called mopping up or blacking out, and probably 80 or 90% of bushfire fighting is this. It's hard, dirty, slogging work. So what you got there, you've got in the bush that's been burned. You've got the chap on the left pointing what's called a TIC, a thermal imaging camera, at the ground. What that does, it looks at the temperature of the surface. So you're looking for hot spots. And when you find one, the other guy following up on the Rayco will scratch around it. We'll see if it really is hot underneath. And if it's hot, we'll put water on it. And so that's a huge job at bushfires, mopping up. We did a lot of edge patrol. So, you can see there our truck on one side of it. You can see it's burnt, and on the other side it's not. And off the top of my head, I don't know if they stopped the fire there. I suspect they didn't. I think this is the edge of a backburn, so they put in a burn earlier to stop the fire sort of to the left. But a backburn is a fire, so we spent days going up and down the edge and again looking for heat and blacking out smokers and hotspots. We did a bit of backburning with the help of the National Parks and Wildfire Service. So this is again an edge of the fire, and you can see the wind is going from that edge into the gully where the fire was. And there was some unburnt ground there that they wanted to burn out. So when the wind went back around to the north, it wouldn't have any fuel to burn back up in this direction. So that helicopter went around dropping incendiaries, starting fires there. And our job was just to patrol that edge and prevent it from reverse burning up the slope and getting away. And we did a bit of fire cause investigation. And in this case, the cause of this fire was actually pretty easy because there was this placard. This is adjacent that burn I just showed you. And apparently this place is the traditional lands of Condoli, who is the keeper of fire. And if you read the plaque, this explained what actually happened. So the Ramangiri people wanted kini, fire, so they could dance and perform talking at night. Now, one person was the keeper of the fire, the giant and powerful Condoli, the whale man. And when Condoli danced, sparks apparently flew out of his body and caused flames to burst out. So I'm pretty sure that's proof positive of how this fire started. If you've got a whale man wandering around with sparks and fire coming out of his feet, I don't think we need to look much further for the cause of that fire, do we?
Yeah, no, exactly right. Oopsie.
I got a horse looking in the window here, and I just want to state up front, the horses have been fed and the cats have been fed. So if there's any audible evidence to the contrary, it's fake. All right, fake news during the show.
I like it when your horses whinny through the window at you, Bruce, and your cats take over a bit of screen time. That's all right.
Long as they're not disappearing down the road, which happened once, you might remember.
So does that mean, though, Bruce, this keeper of the fire, does that mean then that the Industrial Revolution and the last 120 years, there was actually fires happening before that? It wasn't as a result of global warming. Was he responsible for global warming back then when he was around, or?
I think it was probably just on the Fleurieu Peninsula. I'm not aware of this being a fire cause in other parts of Australia.
Okay. Well, there you go.
Now,
we know
of course,
plenty on KO.
We're being a little bit frivolous there because anyone who cares to look knows that much of the Australian bush is dependent on fire. Germination of acacias and other trees is dependent. And in my experience, at least half of the fires we get here in Western Vic are natural occurrences. So they're lightning strikes. And we've got extreme conditions and a ban on tomorrow. And one of the reasons for that is because lightning is expected. And if you get lightning without rain, you can certainly get fires. So, yeah, that's part of the natural ecosystem. You know, the forests get lightning and they burn. That's normal.
Okay. Yep. Nice warm weather back in Adelaide again too. Now we had a nice 30+ degree day.
Yeah, we got that for the next couple, and it's pretty muggy today. It's about 19-20% humidity, which is actually good for fires because the fine fuels, the grasses, are actually much less flammable. If your humidity gets down under about 10% relative, it's really easy for the fires to propagate and spread. So one of the things we look at is relative humidity as well.
Yep. And Gail, you've just jumped on. I'm just letting you know that you won't get me on Facebook anymore because I got nuked off Facebook, Gail. So that's why you probably won't find me and you can't get on Fascist Book on my account because my account doesn't exist anymore.
Stalkbook. Righto, updates. Now, last show, we mused what did happen to the 2 Bankstown nurses. So I've actually looked up, but just to background people who aren't aware, let's bring up a little clip explaining that.
All right.
Good evening.
Keeping yourself on the channel.
Never work again. And tonight, the two Bankstown nurses filmed making anti-Semitic threats have had their registrations formally suspended. Ahmad Rashad Nadir and Sarah Abu Lebder didn't surface today as detectives wait on the unedited video before interviewing them.
Two families on edge.
It's one thing for the lawyer to apologise, but do you not have anything to say yourself?
While the nurses at the centre of the scandal locked themselves away.
What's Sarah saying this morning?
Got no comment.
How is Sarah this morning?
Got no comment.
Does she regret her actions?
Please move away from my house.
Stood down without pay and their registrations now formally suspended over this anti-Semitic tirade.
You have no idea how many Israeli dog came to this hospital and I sent him to Jahannam. I literally sent him to Jahannam.
Let's say an Israeli.
I won't treat them. I won't treat them. I'll kill them.
Wow.
So, yep, you might remember that. So that was the background. So they did get into a wee bit of trouble over that. And might I say in passing, I commend that portly gentleman's handling of the media because the media in these cases can be very intrusive. They stick microphones in your face. They invade your personal space. In this case, they're invading his property. And I thought he did very well handling that. You know, no comment, no comment. Please get off my property. That's much better than punching him on camera, although you might feel that that was a good strategy at the time. They're just trying to get a rise. If they can't get an answer out of you, if they can get a punch out of you, that's newsworthy too.
Trespassing, isn't it? I love it.
Yeah. Well, it's my understanding of trespassing laws is that it's only trespassing if you are asked to leave private property and then refuse to. I don't think it's trespassing per se if you just walk on, not opening any gates or anything. If you just walk onto the lawn, it's only trespassing if you refuse to leave when asked. That is my understanding.
Yep.
Okay, so that was the background. So what actually did happen? So the update is that both nurses are actually going to trial in August this year. And the charges include using a carriage service to menace, harass, or offend. Now, we've discussed this in the past because I don't believe offending is an offence, because I'm not in charge of whether you get offended by something I say. So it's not a crime that I can control. You know, if the criteria for offence is that the victim is offended, that's an indefensible charge, because I can say I'm offended by something, and I don't believe I don't believe you have any right to not be offended by what I say. I think offence is taken, not given. So, whilst using a carriage service to menace or harass, you could perhaps defend. I don't believe using it to offend can be or is a crime, because anyone can say they're offended. You know, what we say here offends me. What other people say offends me sometimes. You know, I'm offended by the fact that I can't offend you. Where does this go? It's an Muslim circling up your own exhaust problem. Now, apparently both of these nurses have pleaded not guilty to the charges.
Wow.
And the lawyer has flagged they were recorded without consent defence. Now, again, my understanding of that, and I've asked people who should know, what are the rules for recording, a conversation? Now, first off, if it's in public, I believe that it's all bets are off, because there is no expectation of privacy in public. So if you want to say or do something in public, I'm entitled to record you saying or doing it. That's the first thing. Now, next thing, my understanding is that I am entitled to record an interaction between myself and somebody else without their knowledge, because the law, as I understand it, under the Telecommunications Act, is that it is permissible to record a conversation provided A, one of the parties is aware that it's happening, and B, the purpose of the recording is for the production of contemporaneous notes. Now, the recording itself consists of contemporaneous notes. So my understanding is that only one person needs to know they're being recorded to make that allowable. So that's what I've been told. So I'm hoping that defence will fall over.
I'm pretty sure there's going to be a lot of people that will be following that case, because regardless of what your views are around what's happening around the world and who you support and don't support and who you think's right and who's wrong, whatever, blatantly saying that you're going to neck someone for their heritage is just is absolutely wrong.
Well, yeah, we'll see where it goes, and we'll see whether we didn't know we would get busted is an allowable defence here.
Yeah, shocking. I mean, how would you feel if it was one of your loved ones that were being treated at the hospital where they worked, right? Regardless of what the heritage, even if you weren't someone of Jewish heritage, of anybody, if a nurse has that sort of contempt and can't be unbiased in their job, to be treated by people like that.
And unfortunately, it's not just here where there are racial or religious motives. We're also aware of reports where nurses have vaccinated children without their parents' knowledge. Sometimes after the parents have specifically said, I do not allow this, they've snuck them off and done it anyway. So as a result of this, as part of COVID and the runoff, isn't it a sad thing that so many of our citizens no longer believe they're safe in hospital?
And what about schools, Bruce? What about schools? What about schools being able to start the transition process of a child without the parents' knowledge? I mean, this is what sort of ridiculousness are we in this country? It's ridiculous. I mean, people aren't massively outraged on the street, bloody jumping up and down about this. This is crazy.
Yeah, perfect. And yes, to answer for Gail, yeah, Mark, my diagnosis for Mark is cigarettes and bourbon, although he thinks it's some sort of infectious particle that's caused it.
I'm going to get Ted Steele on and get his opinion on whether it could be something, an infall from space.
No worries. Moving right along.
Gail, I was going to say though, 34 degrees in Tasmania, Bruce. That's not a bad effort. 34 degrees in Tassie's not known to get too hot too often, is it? Like 34, that's pretty not bad.
Using what sort of measuring device?
Yeah, well, true. It's probably near the airport, is it? Global warming.
I'm giving you a half gazump strike there because I'm going to come back to that.
Sorry about that.
All right.
Forgiveness. Only because I'm sick.
So we're still grinding through the updates. So here's another update. And I rather fear that the post-Bondi weapons control laws, reducing your number of guns, etc., I rather suspect they're going to founder, because it turns out that all sorts of innocuous everyday items can be used as weapons as well. So in this story from, I think, Queensland, the offender or assailant in this case reportedly used a chainsaw as a weapon and then used a knife as a weapon. And then he went on to use a car as a weapon before the police used their own weapons to shoot him dead.
Wow.
So by my count, the police had 2 weapons here and the offender had 3. So I think they're a bit lucky to have actually prevailed in this case.
Yeah. He was able to use all those weapons that were just laying around, Bruce.
Well, I'm thinking we're going to need vehicle control, knife control, and of course, chainsaw control.
Well, I guess there's many people of our vintage, Bruce, that grew up when we'd probably say the same thing about the old wooden spoon that Mum used to drag out and want to wallop us with. That was a weapon and a half, most often used. And the cane. Do you remember the cane at school? You're around the same vintage as me. I remember the old cane.
Yep. Well, at my school, it was the feather duster.
Oh, okay.
And it wasn't the feather end.
No, for sure. You want to tickle you.
All right. Anyway, the point I'm making here is that any sort of violence control measure which focuses on the weapon used rather than the motivation of the assailant, it always founders, because a rock can be used as a weapon, a fist can be used as a weapon, anything. You know, man has been using items from the environment as weapons for a long time. And these improvised weapons can be extremely effective. So, for example, in this truck attack in Nice, 2016, I think it was off the top of my head, the assailant used a 19-ton truck to drive through a festival, killing 86 people and injuring 450.
It's shocking.
So that dwarfs any mass shooting in Australia ever. We know that this attack, if we accept the official narrative, and let's not go down that path again.
Not today.
If we accept the official narrative here, a passenger aircraft, or in fact 4 of them, were used to kill almost 3,000 people. And even in Japan, which has very strict controls, in this case, a knife was used to murder 19 people.
Wow. Bloody hell.
So you can certainly carry out a massacre with items other than guns. So, and we've said in the past, you know, guns used to be very prevalent in society. You know, back in the day, kids could get on a bus with a .22 and take it to school, or the cadets could take their .303 home. What's changed since then? It's the people, it's the culture, it's not the availability of weapons. Because if anything, weapons are far less available now than they used to be.
Yeah, they'll always find a way. That's right. It's not exactly right. You can take things off people nilly-willy as much as you want. It's not going to change if the cultural belief of the people coming in here, and that's the problem. If you don't address that, then it's bigger problems, and people start rising up and protesting and getting frustrated.
Yeah. All right, next update. So last show we demonstrated how the Bureau of Meteorology, so the official meteorology reporting site in Australia, has been fudging the numbers to make it look like the world's getting hotter. So 2 weeks ago, they told us that Walpurgis and Hopetown had recorded their hottest ever temperature of 48.9 degrees, and that's in northwestern Victoria. When in fact, Joe Nova pulled out actual newspaper records from the time that showed, in fact, it had been more than 2 degrees hotter in Oyen and Mildura back in the 30s. So, yeah, the Bureau of Meteorology definitely lies about temperature. And for people to say, oh, well, they adjusted it because the reporting methods or the measuring methods changed. No, they didn't. If you look on the left there, you've got the official measuring device for recording temperature, and that's called a Stevenson screen. And that was invented in the 1880s, I think in Scotland, probably after he finished inventing the steam engine. That's a joke. So the Stevenson screen is this wooden louvered screen of precise dimensions and precise height above the ground. And the intent above that is to allow you to sample air temperature without rain or direct sunlight falling on your thermometer. Because you probably know, if you put a thermometer out in direct sun, it might read 60 degrees Celsius because of the absorption of heat from the sun rays. And that's not what we're reporting when we report temperature. We're reporting air temperature in the shade. So the way they do that is they use this standardized box on the left called a Stevenson screen, and that's been used for well over 100 years around the world. Except it hasn't, because recently, in the last decade or two, they've been progressively replacing the standard Stevenson screen with the modified Stevenson screen, which is the one on the right. And that's much smaller. And hat tip to Anthony Watt's blog, where I've got this from. When they reduced the size of the screen, what that means is that the thermometer which you put in the middle of it is much closer to the roof and the other surfaces. So radiant heat that comes off the roof or the other surfaces, more of it reaches the thermometer. It's almost like it's a little bit in the sun. In addition, they've changed the paint. Even used to have a standard specification for the paint, and they've changed that now as well. It's still white, but it's different. And as a result of it different, it's less reflective. So in the last decade or two, they've been making changes to the instrument that they use to measure temperature. And
you almost think that there's a reason behind that, Bruce. I mean, like there's got to be, a good reason behind it.
well, I don't know if there's a reason behind it, but isn't it curious that every single thing they do to adjust temperature records results in adjusting them upwards?
It's funny about that. It's curious, like you say, very, very curious.
Now, I don't know how this scientific paper ever got published because it's heresy, because what it's pointing out is that, yes, you do record a higher temperature inside the smaller screen, and significantly so. So the smaller Stevenson screen gives you an average across the year of a 0.5 degrees Celsius rise in temperature. And your maximum temperature can go up by 1.7 degrees. So your max, recorded 2 weeks ago, if it was in one of these, you've got to take 1.7 degrees off it. So, this is yet another way that the bomb fudges the data to meet the political mandate, which is we need to tell people that the world's getting hotter.
Exactly. And yes, we did, Anne-Marie, we've covered this before in quite a few episodes ago, but unfortunately they still continue to push their jargon, so we'd like to refresh it, the information.
Yep. And Anne-Marie, if you weren't party to that, one of the biggest reasons why temperatures appear to be rising over time is because the environment around the measuring stations is getting hotter. To start with, we used to have these Stevenson screens at airports because that's where it mattered. And often they were grass or surrounded by grasslands, which are cooler. But over time, the burbs have migrated ever closer and the airports have got bigger and got more concreted over. So we are now measuring heat islands, even though the measuring instrument's in the same place. That local area has got hotter, and that's why almost all maximum temperature records come from airports, because airports are hot places and getting hotter. Airports don't reflect the average temperature across the planet. They are specific heat islands, and so are cities, by the way. So, not only are they reaching back in time and adjusting the records downwards, they're now measuring them in hotter places and using instruments that produce hotter numbers. It's all fraud.
Yep, exactly right. I remember, and Jace, I got banned off Facebook, Jace, so sorry. Thanks for being here. Was it Craig Kelly that called out the bomb? They had a solar panel that was facing upwards from the ground towards one of those screens, and the sun would bounce off it, reflecting into it. And he was like, called him out. Heaps of people sending him photos, going, "What the bloody hell? Check this out." So he was calling them out, something fierce.
You climate denier, you.
Yeah, I know, you're terrible, aren't we? I'm not denying climate. Climate exists. It's just the BS that they keep feeding us, Bruce.
Yeah. All right, another update. Last show, I said that we live in a third world country because of various things, including unreliable power and unreliable police service and unreliable government and money. And our wise rulers have chosen to tear down our formerly safe and effective power system and replace it with a weather-dependent one. But that makes it more unreliable. And I said, well, you're now living in the third world because unreliable power is a feature of the third world. Well, it turns out that the power authorities in South Australia are involved in this, and the Adelaide advertisers noticed. They're obviously watching the show because they've followed up with this story that says South Australia is now a third world country because the power is unreliable. So nice to have a bit of agreement.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, South Australia, we're the basket case here. They keep spooking about, energy prices, which is obviously wholesale is different to retail. And then obviously what you're actually paying without subsidies is a big difference. So definitely here in South Australia, we're paying for the net zero 2027 agenda. That's for sure.
Yeah, we use the word crash test dummy for South Australia in terms of power systems.
Yeah, that's right. Well, they blew up the crash test dummy, didn't they?
All right, into the show. And speaking of crash test dummies, so first story here in the Not Easy Being Green segment is this nasty incident from, I think, China. Danny sent me this, and I honestly do not know the provenance of it, but it looks real to me, and I'm going to play it because it demonstrates the fire risk aspect of EVs in crashes, which we've discussed previously.
Yeah. A big hello to Danny and also my mate Andrew. That tunes in all the time as well.
Good. Oh.
So he slid out. Oh. Wow, that didn't look too bad.
No, pretty minor crash.
Wow. And is there people in the back of that? He's trying to get them out, is he? Wow, that is horrific. Oh. Oh my gosh. Oh. Wow.
So that horrific piece of vision sped up a bit at the start, but nevertheless a pretty minor off-road incident. Presumably he's damaged the battery underneath going off the culvert. Someone's got out the front, after which I don't know if there's no doors on the back or the doors wouldn't open. But you've had a serious fire start almost instantly. And my assessment is the 3 rear seat occupants may well all be dead. I think they would all have serious burn injuries, and they probably got serious inhalational injuries as well. So what a horrific view of what can happen and how quickly it can happen if the battery in your EV goes up.
Oh, that's crazy, man. Even with all that quick thinking, man, you know, like that trying to grab rocks and smashing the windows, trying to drag them out. I mean, bloody hell, that went real quick.
Just awful, wasn't it? All right.
And they didn't, like I said, like it just didn't look like it was a big thing, you know, kind of a minor thing, and ruptured the battery casing or whatever, and all of a sudden, there you go.
How quickly it went.
Yeah.
Now, in this clip, Australian automotive journalist John Cadogan, about a year ago, he actually did the numbers and asked himself, okay, is it true that EVs are really going to save the planet if you believe that CO2 matters? Now, he's an engineer by trade, although he's a journalist now, so he's quite capable of doing the numbers on things. I don't agree with everything he says. For example, he often says that anthropogenic global warming is proven. It's a fact. To get used to it. So leave that aside. He looks at the numbers and says, okay, if that's true, do we really get a benefit in running an EV rather than running an internal combustion engine car? So I'll play the first bit of that clip just to give you a flavour of what Cadogan's about, because I highly recommend him. If you want to find him on YouTube, he's a wordsmith. He's funny as all get out, and he does a lot of vehicle-related views.
So fairly balanced then, I guess.
Yeah. Well, he's an engineer, which means he can't be balanced because he tells you the truth.
Funny about that.
This report is just about guaranteed to get a great many people offside. Greenies, electric utopians, EV manufacturers, the scientifically illiterate, so many of them out there, and importantly, the Net Zero Fetish Club in Parliament House. Meetings every Wednesday night at 8 in the prayer room.
Isn't it great?
Interested. They turn the light off, so that's nice. Even more confrontingly, perhaps, today's video has been independently rated F for facts. I'm Dr. Dugan from AutoExpert.com.au. New cars, cheap, but Australia only.
And M Guy gets to run. We
In
know him
today's
as well.
video, I'm going to compare the notionally most desirable variant of the world's most popular car, a Tesla Model Y Performance, to the notionally most desirable version of the world's most polished small combustion car, a Mazda 2 GT Auto. Several years ago, when I had probably only about 3 ex-wives, back in June of 2008, Jeremy Clarkson tested a BMW M3 against the then pinnacle of automotive green masturbation, the Toyota Prius. It was a pretty extreme test, to be fair, with little to no real-world applicability. They ran the mighty Prius flat out for 10 laps of the Top Gear test track in Surrey in the disunited thought crime kingdom of George Orwell against the Monster M3, which matched the Prius's pace for 10 identical laps. And the result, I have to say, was pretty interesting. The M3 delivered 12% better fuel efficiency than the Prius in these admittedly contrived and extreme driving circumstances. Mr. Clarkson admitted it was one of the dullest drives of my life, but in the interest of science, I stuck with it. Seriously, what I'm saying is it isn't what you drive that matters, it's how you drive it. That is everything. If we did that test today in Australia, doubtless some from Chris Bowen's office would storm straight down to Karen Inman Grant's office, and we'd be deleted forever with extreme prejudice for committing such an act of aggravated misinformation. Therefore, it's kind of interesting to see what happens after I run the thought experiment in today's report, in which the ultimate green masturbation chariot goes up against the Mr. Puniverse of internal combustion.
Funny character.
So that gives you a flavour of young Mr. Cadogan there. I think he's great. I watch him quite a bit, and like I say, he's a real wordsmith, and you can find him on YouTube. Anyhow,
calling out the government, calling out Bowen is always a good thing.
He sounds like if he's not watching the show, he's certainly got common ground, hasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So in this clip, what John Cadogan's done is he's compared what he calls the pinnacle of EVs with what he regards as the pinnacle of economy cars that are not EVs. So he's got the Mazda 2 and he's got the Tesla. Now, he agrees that they are not comparable in a lot of ways. You know, the Tesla weighs a ton more than the Mazda. Admittedly, almost all of that is battery. And the Tesla costs nearly 3 times as much as the Mazda. But his end point is, if you want to get, you know, the ultimate planet-saving EV, Tesla probably ticks the bill. And if you want to get the ultimate petrol-burning economy car, then Mazda 2 fits the bill. And he notes that, you know, at the end of the day, they both carry 4 to 5 passengers. So he thinks, whilst they're not physically the same, he thinks they both do the same job, aiming at different ways.
Mm-hmm.
He then does the calculations of not only how much CO2 comes out the tailpipe, because none comes out the tailpipe of the Tesla. He, as I say, he draws the box around the entire process. So it's the production of the car and the use of the car. He didn't go on to the disposal of the car, but he said, okay, over 10 years, how many carbons does each produce? And he noted that the production of the Tesla produced 7 tons more carbons than the Mazda. And he attributed that mainly to the battery, because making a 900 kilogram battery is very carbons intensive. If he then ran the 2 cars for 10 years at 15,000 kilometres a year, which is apparently average, I do more than twice that. In the 10 years, the Mazda emitted 23 tonnes of carbons and the Tesla emitted 18 tonnes of carbons. Now, he made some assumptions there. He said, I'm not talking about that rare zealot who's got a massive solar array and battery and only charges their Tesla from electrons captured from the sun. He said, in order to do that, you've got to have a massive array and a massive battery, much bigger than almost anybody has. And he said, in fact, he's going to assume that the Tesla driver does what most Tesla drivers do. That is, they fill it up at night. So they get up in the morning, they go to work, they bring it home, they plug it in overnight and fill it off the grid. So he's using the average mix of electrons going into the grid, some from solar, some from dirty planet-killing coal and gas. He's going to assume that that's what they're doing. They're running it off the grid. And he says, look, even if they are running it off a battery system at home, whilst they're putting that battery electricity in the car, they're probably running their house off the grid instead of off the battery, because you need a very large solar array and battery to charge an electric car and run your house. Very large. So he's not looking at zealots, he's looking at the average user. And so over that 10-year period, the Mazda running on petrol actually emits 10% less carbons than the Tesla. And the big difference there is that the Tesla makes 7 tons more in its production. So that's not what you'd think. It's not what you'd think if you read the sticker on the Mazda, which says it produces, 120 carbons per kilometre, and the Tesla will have 0. But if you look at the real world, where you've got to make the Tesla and its battery and you've got to charge it off the grid, in fact, the Tesla is worse than the environment over 10 years than buying a Mazda is. Now, the next thing that Cadogan does is he reminds us of a great principle of economics, and that's the principle of opportunity cost. So the price of these two cars is very different. The Tesla is $90,000 and the Mazda is $32,000. So if you pay 90 grand for the Tesla, you're down, $58,000 that you could spend on something else. If instead you buy the Mazda and then you spend 58,000 on doing something else to save the planet, such as putting in the world's biggest home battery and solar array, you're going to be miles ahead. So not just the absolute number, it's the opportunity cost of how much did it cost to buy each car and what could you have done instead. So it was a bit better anyway for the planet, if you believe that whole theory. But if it's Mazda plus the residual money spent on solar and batteries, you're miles ahead, even not even close. So
exactly right.
Had an engineer do the numbers, and I haven't heard this from our wise rulers. Have you?
No, you won't, because they're following an agenda, Bruce, a global, international groupthink agenda.
Well, our wise rulers are experts, of course, so they should know.
Yeah, well, so they say about Al Gore and what's his name, Bill Gates. He's a trusty expert. He's the vaccine zealot and medical expert of the world, isn't he? I'll be, hang on a minute, he's just a businessman, a scrupulous businessman.
Yeah. And you got Blackout Bowen there, who I'm pretty sure is not an electrical engineer, but he's pushing us down the EV pathway, despite the fact that just buying Mazda 2s would do better for the planet. And that's ignoring a whole lot of other things. It's ignoring the extra fire risk. It's ignoring the fact that our grid infrastructure cannot charge these things. And if we're all going to be pushed into Teslas, we've got to put a bucket load more money into the charging infrastructure, vast amounts.
Wow, so Bruce, they're already committed to spending other people's money to the tune of $5 trillion or some stupid figure like that for the renewable transition, aren't they? It's only other people's money, Bruce. It's only your great grandkids that'll pick up the tab, mate.
And of course, politicians aren't interested in all this sciencey stuff, are they?
No, they just want to kick the can down the road,
It's all very well in practice, but it'll never work in theory.
No. Well, trust the experts, like you say, Bruce. And actually, I bloody rather trust bloody Rowan Atkinson than that guy any day. I think Rowan Atkinson has got a lot more scruples than our climate and energy minister.
And Rowan Atkinson is actually a very bright man, and he's got a higher degree.
Yep.
In history or archaeology, I can't remember which one it is.
He's
Yep.
very smart man. Very smart man. Yep.
Actually, you could Google that while I'm going on. You could see what degrees has Rowan Atkinson got.
Mm-hmm.
Now, even if you believe the whole CO2 warms the planet and is going to kill us all theory, as I mentioned, there's no uniform climate across the planet. Parts of it are pretty temperate and parts of it are extremely cold and unpleasant. And I'm thinking the high and low latitudes. So even if you believe that CO2 is going to cause warming, there are parts of the planet that that's good for. Might not be good for Australia, but it's good for Norway and Canada, as we mentioned. And this story sort of illustrates that with this study coming out that says the boreal forests, the northern pine forests, are increasing significantly in area. Now, of course they are, because plants grow better when it's warm. That's why we have greenhouses. And CO2 is a plant food. That's why we put CO2 into greenhouses to improve things growing.
Yeah.
So this is an example of how a complex system reacts to a change. So we're told, oh my God, the CO2 will go up and the planet will fry. Yeah, except that more plants will grow, which will eat the CO2. So it'll limit how much it goes up, even if you believe it. It's a complex system. You always get a feedback loop to stop the runaway. Because let's face it, the Earth's between, is it 6,000 and 4 billion years old? If there had been a tipping point, like we're told that, we're going to have by next Thursday, it would have tipped a long time ago. We wouldn't be here discussing this now. There cannot be any runaway climate thing possible on Earth because there's been more than enough time for it to have happened already. So what instead happens is that amongst the changes you get when it warms up are changes that cool it down, such as you get more clouds and the clouds reflect sunlight, for example.
And yet, again, Bruce, our wise, all-knowing Bill Gates and others like to invest in technology that reflects the sun and dims the sun and cools the planet. And I was just looking up quickly while you were talking there, is that more people die from cold weather than hot weather, with studies showing that cold-related deaths outnumber heat-related deaths by a significant margin. Globally, about 8.5% of deaths linked to cold compared to less than 1% from heat. Now, why would our master Bill Gates, that wants to care for all the third world countries, and why would he invest in technology that's going to cool our planet when clearly the evidence shows that a slight warming in the planet, like you're explaining there, is actually far more beneficial? I have to wonder that he's behind some other stuff, Bruce, that Bill Gates, he's into permanently vaccinating every member of 7 billion people. He wants to cool the planet. And what is it with Bill, Bruce? What is it?
Well, he's got to have more than one iron in the fire, if I might mix my metaphors. If the global warming isn't killing enough people, he's got to add his vaccines and whatever else he's got his fingers in, injecting cloud blockers into space. I think he was up. Wasn't that one of the ideas?
Yeah, he's doing something. He's got so much money, more money than he knows what to do with. And all people say, oh, he's this amazing philanthropist. He's doing all this good. Yeah, all this good. But anyway, getting back to the other thing, Rowan Atkinson has a bachelor's in electrical and electronic engineering, completed in 1975. He was going to do a PhD, which he was enrolled in, but he left that for acting.
Yeah,
so there you go.
Yeah.
Electrical engineer. So he's not a dumb bloke.
No, he's not, and he's a great actor.
He's funny too. Yep.
All righties. Now, incidentally, when I saw that story, I thought, what is the go with that funny word boreal or borealis? So I looked it up. And the word boreal means northern. So the obvious example is the aurora borealis. So that's the northern lights. So the boreal forests are the northern sort of Arctic rim forests. And the southern hemisphere alternative is austral or australis. So we've got the aurora australis down here in the south. And the word austral actually means southern. So if anybody didn't know,
there you go.
Australia is the great southern land, as that fantastic Ice House song said. So Terra Australis is the southern land. So Australia is that's the root word for our country's name.
Yep.
Righto, on to health, and not much in health this week, just a little bit. And there was this story which was listing all the ways that diabetics could keep their blood sugar under control by eating a low GI breakfast. And most of it was, low-fat Greek yogurt and a few berries and, ancient grains with lots of fibre that you couldn't absorb very quickly. No mention of bacon and eggs, which, of course, has an almost zero carbohydrate content. And no mention of an even lower GI breakfast, which is no breakfast. And I mention that because, as you know, I've been carnivore diet for 5 or 6 years. And the first thing you say when we tell people, well, I'm on carnivore, they say, what do you eat for breakfast? And I say nothing. Carnivores, caveman didn't have breakfast. They didn't get up in the morning and go to the fridge and, wonder what to eat. They ate the night before, or it was gone. The scavengers got it. And they go, oh, I couldn't do that. And in fact, we were all trained in life to get up in the morning. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And, of course, they didn't tell you bacon and eggs would be a good start. They told you it was cereal. You've got to get up in the morning and eat cereal. And various types of cereal were promoted as healthy, all bran, mueslis, etc. But the key point there is they're training you to start the day by stuffing yourself with carbohydrates. Now, some breakfast cereals are 50% sugar, Nutrigrain, Cocoa Pops, etc. And some aren't. But even the ones that aren't are unpalatable unless you put sugar on them. But nobody's eating all bran without something on it. And even so, your body doesn't care. It's bland for you to eat because it's a complex carbohydrate. It's not a simple sugar, so it doesn't taste sweet. But when you eat it, your body chops it up and turns it into sugar. Your body turns bread into sugar. It turns beer into sugar. It turns potatoes into sugar. So it doesn't matter whether you think it's sweet when you eat it. Your body chops it up, and it's the same as eating sugar. Now, having done that, you get a blood sugar rise, your insulin goes up, you pull the blood sugar into your cells, gets transported around to your liver, and your liver says, well, what am I going to do with this? I'll turn it into fat. And that's why you get fat. And then after a few hours, you've gotten rid of all that sugar. Some of it you've burned for your ongoing metabolic needs, and some of it you turn into fat. And your body then says, oi, the sugar levels are getting a bit low, so you get hungry. So that's 11 o'clock in the morning at, coffee break in the morning. So what do? We go get a donut or a bun or something like that. And the process repeats. And then it may be 1 o'clock, your body says again, hey, I'm running low on sugar, and you have your lunch, which is going to be carbs. It might be pastries, biscuits, a pie's got lots of carbs in it, might be a roll, the bread's full of carbs. And then you got your afternoon tea, then you got your evening meal. So we were trained to start off making our bodies dependent on carbohydrates so you could keep buying all of these manufactured carbs through the day. Now, I know that when I was eating that way, I would get up in the morning and I would never feel hungry. It is not normal to feel hungry in the morning. Caveman did not feel hungry in the morning because there was no benefit in him feeling hungry in the morning. He had to go out and catch something and eat it the next night. So he had to go. That was the natural way of doing it. Well, that's no good for the sanitarium or all the mass-produced food companies because they want you buying their processed carbohydrates and seed oils. So if they can trick you into starting your day with a carbohydrate surge, you'll then set up to buy more carbs at morning tea, more carbs at lunch, more carbs in the afternoon, more carbs in the evening. Whereas if you break out of that cycle and don't have anything in the morning, like I used to get up in the morning and think, I'm not hungry, but I've got the most important meal of the day, I've got to have muesli or something. I should have listened to my body. Got up in the morning and said, I don't feel like eating. I won't. And when you're on the carnivore diet, you never get very hungry. I mean, food is still nice, and you might look forward to a nice juicy steak, but it's not like, oh, I'm dying, I've got to have something. And you're certainly not hungry in the morning. So the whole eating carbs in the morning thing is a con. And if you don't do that, after a little adjustment period, you are never hungry in the morning. Why not listen to your body? If you're not hungry, don't eat.
Yeah, exactly right.
All right.
Sad to hear, Anne-Marie. You're let go as a nurse for not taking Hep B, eh? Oh, they lost someone.
Yeah, well, a few of us went that pathway one way or another. And on that topic, it'd be good if I know America's just taken the first day of life Hep B off the recommendations for vaccines. And I believe Australia still has it on. Now, the problem with that is, of course, it's a vaccine. It's got its own risks, and giving it to a baby on the first day of life is probably the most dangerous time you can do it. But the point is, you can actually test and see whether it's a risk. Because the way you get Hep B is either by sleeping with prostitutes or injecting with dirty needles, by and large. So if you test the mother to see whether the mother's got Hep B positive, if they're negative, and 99% of mothers are, there's no benefit giving it to the kid. There's only risk. So what's the convention? Don't test for it. Just give the shot anyway. Just give the shot anyway. And a relative of mine the other day said that they'd, they were saying, oh, great, my cholesterol level is down to 4 point something. That's great, blah, blah, blah. But the doc still said I should take a statin. What for? I said, well, the doc said, just to be on the safe side.
And you've seen this big reinvention of the statins. All these people coming out and say statins are safe. There are too many people watching the show, Bruce, and you talking about statins. Now they've got to do this big campaign to make it all happy again.
Yeah, apparently all of the side effects of statins are just illusions.
They've just disappeared. They were just like, it was all just.
You're just imagining them all. All the people who complained about mental fog and sore muscles, they were just imagining it. Looked like a mass delusion. Well, good luck. Good luck there. All right, where are we? Oh, money and finance. Now, these are all 2-week figures, so bear that in mind. But there's been a huge amount of volatility in the financial markets recently. And I regard that as a sign that the entire government money, fiat money system is coming apart at the seams, and it is. I think that was a significant part of why the precious metals went up in price, which, of course, governments, they can't have that. We want you in government managed money so we can skim it through inflation and, lock it up in the banks and steal it. But there's been a huge volatility. So gold was down a couple of percent over the 2 weeks. Silver was down 30%. That is a massive drop. And in fact, the financial people say that's what's called a 6 sigma event. So it's a 6 standard deviation event. So if your price of silver follows a normal distribution, the chance that it could fall by 30% in a couple of days is about 1 in a billion. So the chance of that was what they call an organic move is about 1 in a billion.
Yeah.
Which means that, no, it was caused. There was manipulation in doing that. And we're seeing that with gold, silver, and Bitcoin. The big boys are pushing the price up and down, taking the opposite bet and skimming money out of everybody. And the fact that the volatility is increasingly high means that the system is increasingly unstable. And I've been expecting the global government money system to crash for a couple of decades. Once I worked out what a fraud it is, I'm amazed we haven't had a major drop. We had some 2008, we had about a 30% drop. But the increased volatility we're seeing lately may well be the quickening. And I would be unsurprised if in the next few months to maybe a year, there was a massive global financial meltdown, same as we had in 2008. All the signs be there, if you ask me.
Yeah. And just to share this, Bruce, what I talked at the beginning of the show, This is a website called Joe. I was put onto it by watching Ivor Cummins, the Fat Emperor.
Yep.
He did everything on it, and so I recommend, like in this context that we're talking about, I've been listening because I've been a bit crook. I've been listening to some of the YouTube. It's actually on YouTube as an audio book. So YouTube Tragedy and Hope 101 by Joe Plummer. If you've got time, you're driving your car, have a listen to that. It's I think it's a series of about 10 videos, but listen to that. It's a real eye opener. And look, probably a lot of people wouldn't be surprised about what they're hearing about, because we've talked on our show about financial bankers and the financial institutions and why it all started back in the 18. So they started talking about this in the 1860s already, 1870s, into the 1900s, and this is that whole manipulation of what we've brought about. And we know that the financial institutions were set up to benefit a very small portion of people and the sheep. And you've talked into a lot about solutions, about the sort of things you've done, about getting yourself in a good situation where you're not reliant on them, and then one of the big things is obviously, release yourself of any debt if you can. I know it's hard, look at ways to set yourself up for the future. Look at your small communities. These people are determined to crush the ordinary people because they've got themselves set up. Everything that's been happened over the last 100 years, whether it be wars, whether it be other things, it's a real eye-opener. And you knew this, and many other people are watching are aware of this. But my message is, obviously, the more we're learning is set yourself up in the best way possible, that you are absolutely not reliant on financial institutions, that you're reliant on yourself. Get together with your communities, love each other and work together. On the people that will support you, support them back. The people that treat you like crap, will ditch them, leave them. But there's much bigger stresses coming, and the only way we're going to get through that is if we work together as a community. Yep,
100%. Personal resilience, not reliance on government, because if you're reliant on government, you're just being farmed like a farm animal. They're skimming wealth out of you the entire time, and they're pushing products on you which make you sick, just so as their big industry partners can also skim money out of you. Agreed.
Yep.
And just answering that one there, have I heard of chlorine dioxide? Yeah, I have. I haven't been deeply down that. That's on my in my stack of things to go further into. But yeah, I believe there are certainly advocates for that as a health measure. So there you go.
Yep. I did follow a little bit of Jody Lowe. He's doing some great work trying to teach people about becoming self-reliant and that. But ultimately, it's the buck stops with you as an individual. Is trying to put yourself in the best position possible to be reliant on yourself.
Yep. Now, incidentally, having spoken about precious metals, you might remember a couple of weeks ago I recommended Mike Maloney's Gold, Silver and Hidden Secrets of Money series. And in that, Mike Maloney has previously said that when it all goes to custard, which it appears to be going, the precious metals would first become unaffordium, meaning you just couldn't afford them, and then they'd become unobtainium. And certainly with the 5x in prices for gold and silver in recent years, they're well on the way towards unaffordium. I used to be able to buy a gold coin, and a gold coin now is over $6,000. The silver coins that I used to give to the cousins and so forth and their nieces and nephews at Christmas, they were like $20. They're over 100. So we're well on the way to unaffordium. And I did have a relative ring me recently and saying, I wanted to put some money into precious metals. Where do I get it? So I recommended this business in Adelaide and Melbourne. And she said, oh, bad luck, they're not selling anything. They've temporarily paused sales because they haven't got any stock. They've sold everything.
Wow.
So that's the unobtainium box of Mike Maloney added to the unaffordium box.
Yeah. No, they hit all our Five Eyes countries endeavouring to preserve, haven't they? If you look at Canada, Australia, New Zealand, UK, they're bloody hammering us all.
Yep. The Western world and its diaspora is targeted for extinction. Correct.
Yep.
All right. Okay, moving on to the next finance story, and it's hold on to your wallets time, because in May, the federal government's going to bring down their annual budget, and that's Treasurer Chalmers there. And he's already seeding out trial balloons through the mainstream media, saying that one of the things he's going to focus on is tax reform. Now, Mark, do you remember Bruce's iron law of taxation?
The iron law of taxation. No, well, I'm stumped.
I'll put it there for you.
It's theft.
Correct.
Hmm.
My iron law of taxation is that tax reforms are always tax increases.
Hmm.
So Treasurer Chalmers says he's going to focus on tax reform, which means he's going to focus on tax increases. And he needs to, because he got cut off at the pass with his unrealised capital gains tax thought bubble just after the election. You know, he thought he could tax you on money that you didn't have yet. He got enough pushback that they actually stopped that. Which means, okay, either the government's got to pull their heads in and spend less money, or they've got to raise more tax. Guess which one they're going to choose.
The easy fix, Bruce. The easy fix.
They're going to go get more tax. And the mainstream media has been prepping the battlefield, as us military people used to say. He's preparing the public for that to happen. So he's telling them that it's a good idea. So we're seeing a lot of stories like this. So this one from ABC News talked about capital gains tax reform. There's that word, okay? And what they're saying is that we need to change the capital gains tax system. So let's just briefly revisit what is capital gains tax. So capital gains tax is a tax paid on the increase in value of an investment between when you buy it and when you sell it. So in this example, say you bought a rental property, investment property for $750,000, and sometime later you sold it for $950,000. So your investment there has gone up in apparent value by $200,000. So that's called a capital gain. Okay. So when you sell it, your business partner, the government, is going to hold out their hand for their cut of the profits. So if you sell it in under a year, they're going to want half of that. So they're going to want 100 grand off you if you sell it in less than a year. If you sell it after a year, they're going to want a quarter of that. So they're going to want 50 grand. That's the current law. Now, this was brought in, I think, back in the 90s to give you at least partial compensation for inflation. Because as you know, the value of all government currencies, all fiat currencies, falls over time, and that's deliberate. Governments like that. So the price of your investment, all other things being equal, is going to progressively rise over time, not because the investment got more valuable, but because the dollar that you're measuring it with got less valuable. So that's the reason they have the so-called capital gains discount, the 25% over more than a year, is to at least partially compensate you for the fact that the dollar's not worth as much. You're measuring it with a smaller measuring instrument. Now, here's an example of why this matters. So in Perth recently, this house was sold for $20,000. Was bought for $20,000 in 1963. And I put a star there because obviously we didn't go decimal till 1966. So they've converted, pounds, shilling and pence to that. So this Perth house, which cost $20,000 in 1963, has just sold for $2.7 million. So if that was an investment property, the government's going to say that you just made a profit of best part of $2.7 million based on the comparison of those two numbers. And they're going to stick out their hand for a quarter of that. They're going to want, what's that, about $600,000 of you for your profit. That's their cut of your profit.
Yeah.
Because as you might remember, your business partner, put up some of the money originally, helped manage the property, ensured it was in good repair, paid the agent's fees. I jest, of course. The government did jack for you here, except hold their hand out at the end and say, we're the mafia, shame if, nice house you got here, be shame if something happened to it.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And all because they just can't rein in their own spending, Bruce.
They're like drug addicts. They cannot stop spending.
No. So other people's money, Bruce.
Here's where
Democratic socialists.
Oh, they're not socialists, except they are.
Yeah.
So here's the importance of inflation. So we're regularly told that inflation is of the 2 to 3% band. The government regularly tells us that that's what the inflation rate is, even though you and I have discussed numerous examples where it's closer to 10% and has been for my entire life. So since the 60s. And I've shown that with precious metals and ice creams and other things.
Yep.
So even if we take the government's number, let's call it 2.5%, and apply that to that house over, what's that, a bit over 60 years, $20,000 worth of house back in 1960s would now cost you $245,000. That's just the equivalence of buying power of the money. So that's if you take the government's numbers. So we know the government's numbers are fraudulent. And if we instead take the 10% rate and say, okay, how much would $20,000 equate to in 2025 using a 10% inflator? And it's 9.6 million. So if it's even 6 or 7%, that house hasn't gone up in value at all. So the tax they're charging you, the capital gains tax they want to charge you for the gain in value of your investment property, is not a tax on a gain in value of your investment property. It's a tax on the loss of value of the Australian dollar.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is why you have to have an allowance for inflation in capital gains tax measurements. And if you're only allowing a 50% instead of a 75%, it means the government's just going to they're going to steal from you most of the apparent gain, which is not real. It's a loss of value of the dollar, not a gain in value of the investment. But they're going to say you made a profit, and they're going to skim a lot of that out. And governments do this all the time. They want you in government money, and they want your assets in government money, because that way they can skim 2, 3, 4, 10% a year out of your money all the time. And they do. Now, if you choose to hide your money from that inflationary skim by buying gold or shares or investment properties, they still want their cut of it, but they wait until you sell it. So when you sell it, they take a cut back, and that's effectively, that makes up for the fact that they couldn't skim you all the way along via inflation. So that's what they're doing. It's theft and fraud, and your government's been doing it for all of my lifetime, since the early 60s.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're continuing, and future generations are getting kids earlier, so.
They're stealing the stuff off my children is what they're doing.
Yeah.
Now, here's another insidious piece of framing that the bought and paid for media have been throwing at us as they float this trial balloon. And they're repeatedly referring to the capital gains, the lower rate, if you hold it for longer, as a discount. Remember I said if you sell it inside of a year, it's a 50% capital gains tax. If you sell it after, that's a 25%. So the media is calling that 25% rate a discount. Albo himself has said that it's a perk. So not getting taxed at 50% is not only a discount on the real rate, it's also a perk. So, you're getting something you shouldn't get. And our friends, The Guardian, who are also socialists, they've added to that and says that this discount, the fact that I'm not being taxed more, is costing the country money.
Wow.
So
wow.
here's
It's
a
costing
picture.
because we're not paying enough. Not paying enough. It's costing the country.
For our friends at The Guardian who obviously don't speak English, the only person that a tax costs is the person who pays the tax. So if I'm being taxed at a 25% rate instead of a 50% rate, it doesn't cost you money. It only costs me money, 25 or 50%, because I'm the person paying the tax. You know, it's a bit like saying that if a mugger takes my money, you know, and he takes my wallet, which has got $100 in it, but he misses the other $100 that I got in my top pocket. It's like saying that I have cost the mugger $100 because I didn't hand over all of my money. That's basically what they're saying. If they're saying that, you know, the real rate's 50, and if you're getting 25%, it's a discount.
Yeah, that's right. And Gail, I'm not sure that you'd have to check with the accountants on family trusts and all those sorts of things, but I know that a lot of people went that way, trust into family trusts and stuff, but they'll come after that eventually. You know, they'll find any which way possible to come after what's yours, because they are addicted to spending money. They are absolutely addicted to other people's money, and that's just how it works.
Now, this article actually combined both ideas. It said that by not charging me 50%, by only charging me 25%, somehow that meant that taxpayers were, you know, on the hook for the rest. It was going to cost ordinary taxpayers $250 billion if I pay less tax, and that the tax discount was only being a benefit to the rich. The top 1% were getting most of the benefit of this tax discount. Well, again, here's a pro tip for people who don't speak finance. In order to benefit from a tax discount, you have to pay tax. Okay. And the top 1% in Australia currently pay nearly 20% of the income tax, and the top 5% pay 35%.
Wow. So
if you cut income taxes, guess who's going to get the most benefit? It's the people who are paying the tax already. Same. If you have what they call discount on capital gains tax, well, the people who benefit are the people who are paying capital gains tax. And rich people are paying more because rich people have more investments and assets. So they're setting us up. They're basically, the message being sent here is that rich people are ripping off ordinary taxpayers and the country because they're not paying more tax. That's basically what they're saying.
Yeah.
And they're also saying that, you know, it's the man in the street who's paying it because the rich people aren't paying it. No, the man in the street's not paying any tax. Certainly not paying net tax. You know, once you take out the value of the services they get, the average Australian is negative. They're not a net taxpayer at all. And almost everything that we get paid for by government is paid for by the top 1, 2, 5%. Almost all of it. Because everyone else is a tax eater, not a taxpayer, even if they pay tax.
And as you've explained before, Bruce, in another episode, we talked about what happened. What do wealthy people do when they feel something's unfair in a country that they reside in? What do they do with their money and their funds? Was I going to get that you again?
There's no strike.
Oh my goodness! There we go.
I'll come to that in just a second.
I've been watching for 95 shows, Bruce. So you know, I'm slowly starting to get some stuff right. I'm a bit slow on the uptake, but I'm getting there, mate.
I'll come to that in just a second because I've got one more issue before I do. And here's the issue. One of the other things they're telling us is that the reason they're doing this is to bring housing prices down. You know, we all know there's a housing crisis in Australia. Very hard to get a rental property, which means you're paying more to get it. You've got to bid over other people. So one of the things that they're saying is if we tax rental properties, make them less profitable, then their value will be less and the prices will come down. Well, that's true. That's true. If you tax an investment more, you make it less attractive, and so people will be less inclined to do it. which means new investors coming in who've got investment money to spend are going to be less likely to build an investment property for rent for someone else. They're going to put their money somewhere else. So if what they're saying is true, then it's going to worsen the supply of housing, not improve it. It's not going to make it cheaper. It's going to make it less available, which will make it more expensive. So it's not even going to do what they say it's going to do. And we all know what it's meant to do. It's meant to get more money for the government. The whole this will help young people get into properties thing is BS. It's just a smokescreen.
Yeah. I'm just going to play something quickly from someone that I've been following for a little bit. And there's lots of people, commentators talking on this, but the government, there's actually a video, there's actually evidence of government outbidding Australians. And now I'm just going to, this is a quick excerpt of something that I shared. See if I can get the sound up and sound up on it if it comes up. Yep, sounds on.
When you put all of this together, the Senate hearing wasn't just uncomfortable, it was damning. An agency spending tens of billions without clear outcomes, a government competing against its own citizens in the housing market, homes costing more than most Aussies could ever afford, consultants everywhere cashing in, documents redacted, answers deferred, and all of this while rents are exploding. House prices remain out of reach, mortgage repayments are higher, and households are already under enormous pressure. This is what happens when housing policy becomes about optics instead of outcomes. And that's why this inquiry matters, because at some point, someone has to ask the hard questions. Someone has to force transparency. Someone has to say, this is not working. When you...
So that's a part of a 5 or 6 minute video where he actually breaks it all down. But that Senate inquiry that was talked into, that was during the week, last week, and actually found that government was outbidding on a block the Australian person. I mean, it's just bloody outrageous, mate. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Government should have no role in housing. The private market should manage it, same as everything else.
Yeah, 100%, man.
All right. Okay. And this is back to your gazump strike where you said, okay, what do the rich do when you start trying to steal more of your money? Well, Walter Wriston's law explains that. Money goes where it's treated best. So what the rich will do is they will move their money. And because of that, I mean, this is targeted at improving the supply of residential housing. That's the initial thought bubble here. But it can't stay there, because given that money is mobile, investors will move their money from investing in residential property to other investments. So this increase in capital gains tax, because that's what it is. It's not removal of a discount. It's increase of the rate by double. That is going to have to apply to every other investment as well. Precious metals, Bitcoin, stocks and shares, you name it. Because if it doesn't apply to every other investment, then capital will simply flee the housing market into these other areas. So you can guarantee that whilst the government might sell this as a measure to improve housing affordability, A, it won't do it, and B, it'll increase the tax on every other investment that you have by 50% as well. They have to do that, otherwise the money will flee.
Yep.
Now,
exactly.
As part of the framing here, not only have they had endless stories this week telling us that the lower rate is a discount and the rich are ripping people off, they've actually rolled out 3 ultra-rich Australians, all of whom have said, I'm perfectly happy to pay more tax. I think I should be paying more tax. Now, of them, Dick Smith I've heard of, and the other 2 I haven't. But they've apparently signed a global letter saying we should be paying more tax. Pro tip for Dick Smith and others, you're perfectly free to. If you want to cut a check to the government for an extra few mil a year, do it. You can do that. You don't have to make me do it to make you feel good. Just do it yourself if you think that's a good idea.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's my first thought about that.
I wonder how Clive feels about that.
Given Wriston's law, we know the rich people they've got the resources to avoid increased theft. You and I don't.
That's right.
If capital gains tax or income tax goes up, we can't get around it. The rich people have all sorts of complicated legal structures. They will avoid it. They will avoid it. You know, it doesn't matter that Dick Smith comes out and says, I'm happy to pay more tax. He won't, and his friends won't. And here's a couple of examples, of course. California's tried this recently, whacking on a wealth tax, and guess what? The rich people have left California.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg left, and he left because of the wealth tax. Now, the little people, the Untermensch, you and I, if we lived in California, we can't up and leave. It's too hard, and we've got to sell our stuff. But people like Zuckerberg, they can just leave. They can just go somewhere else, and they do. And we had the same thing in Norway. Norway tried the same thing, a wealth tax, you know, an extra tax, only going to hit the ultra wealthy. You know, don't worry about it if you're just a little man in the street. This is only aimed at the, you know, the rich bastards. Well, they tried that in Germany, in Norway, and hat tip to Danny again, who sent me this. And what happened? They got less tax than they did at the start.
Yeah, because they left the country.
Because the rich people left. And like I said, it's the rich people that pay all the tax. The top 1, 2, 3, 5% pay all the tax. And you get a couple of, you know, you get Mark Zuckerberg leaving your state. It leaves a noticeable hole.
Yeah. Well, didn't Elon Musk leave one of the states?
Didn't Elon Musk leave California and go to Texas? Same.
I think so, yeah. He took his whole operations and that. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
If a trillionaire leaves your state, that makes a big hole in your tax base.
Yep.
Well, this is what happened in Norway. They thought, we'll jack up the taxes, get more money. They got less because the rich people avoided it.
Well, it's a socialist way, isn't it? You come after more of other people's money rather than looking at your own spending habits. You know, you reduce your costs. You know, here in Australia, our public services grown exponentially. People on the public purse, they just like continue giving this and giving that. And now for, like, you know, Labor's banging on about their, you know, Medicare and throwing more money at that, you know. And of course, the average person goes, "Oh, you know, you'd rather that than live in America where they don't have that safety net, you know? Wouldn't you want all this, you know, free hospitals and cover and all this sort of stuff? It's, you know, it's for the greater good, right? But it ends up costing someone down the track."
Yeah, and in America, which got the worst healthcare outcomes of virtually any nation in the world, and spends more money on it than any other country. Yeah, no, I don't want to be like in America, but I don't want to be like here either. Yeah, and I make the point, you know, they're going to portray this as this is only going to affect the rich bastards. Well, I've just shown you that they'll avoid it. And the other thing is it won't. How many ordinary Australians do you know who own 1 or 2 investment properties? For many of them, it's their retirement, their superannuation saving. There's plenty of them. They're the ones that are going to be hit by this, not the rich who are going to leave, take their money elsewhere.
Yeah, wasn't there a tax that was meant to be abolished when the GST come in? There was something that's been around since post-war. There was some sort of thing that was in post-war, and they were going to abolish it when the GST come in, but they didn't end up doing it.
Payroll, stamp duty, all sorts of things.
Oh, one of those, yes. I think it might have been stamp duty, actually. I think it was stamp duty, one of those, yeah.
How much does a bloody stamp cost?
Well, apparently, depending on how expensive your house is, it could be anything up to $80,000 or $100,000.
Look, I've mentioned this before, but when I sold my house in the Adelaide Hills to move to Vic, the government got more in stamp duty, about $40,000, than the estate agent got as commission, about $30,000, and he did all the work.
Yeah, that's right.
The government got more than the estate agent, who was great and did a fabulous job. Just for a stamp.
Yeah.
I'll make my own bloody stamp.
That's right. Thanks for coming. Exactly right. Bloody hell.
All right. And here's another bit of bad news, because it appears that Bruce's iron law of tax reform applies to other financial things as well. Because this story was reported during the week, which said that there are going to be power bill reforms in Australia, which is going to hit Australian families. Why is it going to hit them? Well, it can only hit them if the price goes up. And so here's what the reform that's proposed. They're going to charge you more as what's called a supply charge, just for the fact that you've got power on your block, than they're going to charge you for what you consume. So they're going to charge more for the connection and less for the power that you consume. But guess what? When you add those two things together, the net effect is higher. So whenever you see the word reform in connection with finances, just assume you've got to, bury your wallet, hide your wallet. And by the way, the reason they're doing this is because people who've elected to consume limited or no power because they've got solar arrays and home batteries, they're a cost to the grid, you see. So in order to get money from them, because they're not taking much grid power, they got to tax them by the service charge. They've done the same thing in the UK, by the way, with the EV mileage charges. As in Australia, in the UK, they tax your fuels and use it to make the roads, if you believe that. But they've also incentivized people to buy EVs, which don't buy fuel and therefore don't pay fuel tax. And it's got to the point where they're now going to have to get fuel tax off EV drivers. And the way they're getting that is by charging you a mileage charge. Exactly the same thing. So all the people who are conned into getting an EV on the grounds that they wouldn't be paying fuel tax, you'll be paying a mileage charge. And all the people who paid $20,000 or $30,000 to put a massive solar array on their roofs and a battery on the grounds that, hey, you're not going to be paying for your power. Well, yeah, you are, because you're not paying for your power, you're paying for the backup connection. So beware the word reform. Reform means increase.
Yeah, it always does.
Always does. The diversity divides update. Now, I'm genuinely concerned for Lebanese origin Bob Katter because I think he might have broken the new censorship laws.
Oh, dear.
Because he's just been kicked out of Parliament for saying that new immigrants to this country must integrate.
Oh, wow. How dare
Now, by doing that, he's implying that the existing Australian culture is better than the culture of the immigrants. So I'm pretty sure he's just broken the censorship laws.
Yeah, wow, very likely.
So here's what he said. I was thrown out of Parliament today for daring to raise what millions of Australians are already talking about, that the Australian government must immediately address the unsustainably high level of migration and its serious impact on the state of the nation by urgently implementing a policy of no migration without integration.
What's wrong with that, Bruce? Jacinta Price says the same.
No, well, that's obviously hateful, because that's implying the fact that you need to integrate means that your your migrant culture is not as good or not compatible or can't be standalone.
Well, why would you want to come to Australia, Bruce? Well, why would you want to come to Australia? What's so good about Australia, Bruce?
A fair bit of welfare here.
Yes.
As other people have noted, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, when Greeks and Italians came here, they fitted into the communities. Nonna might never have learnt to speak good English, but the kids did and the men did because they went out to work. So they integrated. But the numbers that were coming were small enough and the need to integrate was high enough. We didn't have a welfare state. You couldn't, live in your enclave in Bankstown and just ignore the rest of the world and take the money from the infidels. Integration was necessary, and it was possible because the cultures were actually similar. They were Western cultures, even if the language wasn't. So there was only one barrier to get over. That was the language barrier, and there were plenty of incentives to do so. So earlier waves of immigration integrated. Latter waves have had no need to immigrate because the numbers have been high enough and the supports have been high enough that there isn't any need to do it. And we've also chosen cultures that regard the Australian culture as inferior and they don't want to integrate. So throughout the West, because of the change in our immigration demographic, we're not getting immigration anymore. We're getting colonisation. We're being colonised by other cultures.
I miss the days of Con the Fruiterer.
They're not here to become like us, to join us.
No.
They're here to replace us.
Yeah. Well, that's what happens. There's a reason for that.
I think Mr. Katter might be going to jail based on that, because I'm pretty sure he's broken the censorship law by suggesting that. And by the way, I rang my MP, my Nationals MP today, and said, whilst I like Angus Taylor better than I like Sussan Lee, I don't like the idea that the coalition's back together, because the Nationals are more closely aligned with One Nation. And if they want to be a coalition partner, they should be in coalition with One Nation. And if there is a One Nation candidate in my electorate, they'll be getting my vote, not the Nationals, because of that.
Yep.
And on that topic, I would invite everybody to find out whether their local federal member is Labor or not. Because if they're Labor, I'd like you to call them and say, what's this about increasing the capital gains tax on investment properties? If you do that, that's going to hurt me and that's going to cost you my vote. Now, remember we had this discussion a couple of months ago when they were talking about unrealised capital gains taxes, and actually there was obviously enough pushback that they actually didn't do it. This is only a thought bubble. They're pushing it out now 3 months ahead of the budget to see how much pushback they get. If they get a lot, it may not appear. If the people seem apathetic about it, they're going to do it. So
a bit of a campaign about it then.
I rang my MP and said, you got to oppose this, and if you don't, that's a vote killer. Or if it's a Labor one, tell them you vote Labor, and this is again, you're not going to vote Labor if they bring this in. Very important enough. A phone call tells them that 100 people are thinking what you're thinking. You know, a phone call is worth a lot more than you think.
Yep.
And remember, we got a election coming up in Victoria and South Australia soon. Be interesting to see how they go. And
very good test, won't it? Yeah.
If there's a rise of One Nation, as there appears to be, and One Nation is against A, mass immigration, and B, raising the tax threshold, that'll put the wind up the Labor state and federals. They will notice. They must know that Pauline Hanson is a huge threat to them.
Yep.
Both at a local and a federal level. She's a huge threat to them.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I urge you, contact your MP and say, I've heard this is happening. This is a vote killer for me.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I'm happy to report that there is a One Nation candidate in my seat of Mawson, where I live, and at this stage is very, very likely that he'll end up getting my my number one here in Mawson.
Yep. And as I said during the week, Sussan Lee got the boot, and terrible piece of misogyny. That was the only reason there was a challenge is because she was a woman, obviously.
Yeah.
That and the catastrophically low polling for the Liberals. But again, that's just because people hate women. But she's been replaced by Angus Taylor, and he's immediately come out and said a couple of things that I agree with. So he said he's going to look at immigration, and he's also mentioned cost of living. So both of those things are good. Having said that, he was part of the Morrison government, which bent us all over a barrel during the COVID era, and for that reason, he would never get my vote. No person with Liberal in the branding, including Alex Antic, will ever get my vote whilst they're allied to that party. And Angus Taylor, he was aboard the Green Dream. He stood and nodded during the COVID tyranny. He might be better than Sussan Lee, but he's still not worthy of my vote, and he won't get it.
Yeah, wasn't he climate change minister under Morrison or something? He was something to do with that, wasn't he? Yeah.
He was certainly influential at the time. I can't remember if he was actually the minister. Okay. Miscellaneous. Actually, this is the last story.
How about that?
Now, only a few days ago, I first heard about this school shooting in Canada. And I was puzzled. And I was puzzled for two reasons. One is that isn't Canada, a highly draconian gun restricting state? Don't they have laws to prevent this sort of thing in Canada?
Yeah, no, I was really surprised when I heard this story coming out of Canada with guns. I thought straight away, oh, that happened in America. And then I've seen the stories like, what, Canada?
Yeah, isn't it just the gun nuts south of the border who are at risk of this now?
Yeah, wow. Yeah, crazy stuff.
So that was the first thing I thought that was odd. And the next thing I thought was odd is that the shooter was apparently a woman. because that is
Yeah.
extremely unusual. In fact,
Yep.
I can't remember the last time a woman shot up a school anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
They're almost always troubled young men, usually from broken homes and on SSRIs, almost always.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember reading that and thinking, "Ooh, that's different."
Mm-hmm.
But fairly quickly, you see the plot thickened. Do you want to drop off one so I can bring up?
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay, so the plot thickened pretty quickly when the Canadian authorities reported on this.
Mm-hmm.
That includes the deceased gun person.
Okay. And then separately, do you know the gun person's
person.
relationship to the...
Yes, I'll play that again. So the reporter and the police spokesman labelled this woman as a gun person. Why would you label a woman as a gun person?
It doesn't
That
make
includes
sense,
the
does it?
deceased gun person.
Okay. And then separately, do you know the gun person's relationship to the...
It just makes you laugh when they're just so comical. Gun person, right? Wow. Like,
Okay,
pregnant
so-
person. It's like pregnant person, Bruce.
So that was obviously a bit of a red flag there, wasn't it?
Mm.
And in fact, it was, because it turns out that the gun person was not a woman at all. The gun person was a man pretending to be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it immediately does fit the profile. Not only was this a male who committed the shooting, but there were signs of mental distress. So
Yeah.
were they on SSRIs? I don't know. Were they on cross-sex hormones? I don't know. But this was not a woman committing this. And yet the police spokesman lied by calling them a gun person. And the media reporter joined in on it. Okay. Now, it was pretty transparent, and pretty soon people went, yeah, I know what that means. And you might just want to add that to your list of tells. So next time the police talk about a gun person, you can just assume they're a man pretending to be a woman. And it's a bit like that other phrase, when the police tell you after a mass attack, we don't know what the motive of the attacker was, you can just assume that they're Islamic. It's a tell.
Yeah.
So when that's the dog that doesn't bark. When they don't say something that clearly should be said, well, we could just fill in the blanks. So, and that was true here. So add that to your list of tells. And on that note, at 7:02, so 2 hours and 2 minutes, I'm done.
Wow, mate, you've done really, really well. Look at you go. 2 hours, just cracked on over 2 hours, which is not bad at all. Not bad at all. I have got something to finish on, Bruce.
Let me just answer this question first. What is the plumbing of the gun person? Now, you and I both know that it is entirely irrelevant, because even though sexual anatomy does not define gender, chopping it off apparently affirms it.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
yeah, exactly right.
And yes, that is exactly right too. And in fact, many examples from the US where they've labelled the offender as white, and the picture says something clearly different.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. While you were talking, because I didn't want to interrupt you, we're talking about the government getting access to money earlier. Now, I'm not sure if you're aware, but this is from MyGov. What happens when your child turns 14? When your child turns 14, they can get their immunisation history statement. They can also register a bank account with Medicare. I'm going to read on. At 14, your child can apply for a tax file number without your help, Bruce. So, without you as the parent, they can get it on without their help, because they want people, I think they want people in the workforce earlier, Bruce, because obviously once you're in the workforce, you can pay taxes, Bruce. And but you can't get your learner's permit, or you can't even access social media, Bruce.
Yes, that's right. Yep.
Once your child turns 14, you'll no longer be able to access the immunisation history statement, Bruce. So it's forcing forcing them to do this, to go online. So as a parent of your 14-year-old child, Bruce, you are not able to access their medical records, their immunisation history. They have to do this, Bruce.
Did
so
you
they
say
want
your?
you? Hey,
You said your child.
yeah.
This,
No,
this
clearly.
is not your child. This is
no,
the government's
clearly.
child.
Yep. Yep, exactly right. I just thought while you were talking, I thought, and I shared this during the week on my account, on my ex account, and I thought, you know, they just want to get you in a lot earlier. But Bruce, what do you want to share with you to close? You and I, obviously, people know that I'm Christian. I've sent you. You've got some reading material now, and
It's arrived and it's beautiful. Thank you.
Yes, that's okay. And what prompted me to bring this up is that you mentioned Terra Australis earlier when we were talking about the Borealis lights, and you talked about the Southern Cross and all that sort of stuff. I'm not sure if too many people are aware of this. I got this highlighted to me. I'm going to share this because, you know, back British heritage, you know, Judeo-Christian heritage Australia, you know, we were Christian 1901 when we were formed. 98% of Australia was Christian. But do you know, Bruce, that actually our Christian heritage, this land was blessed way before 1788, Bruce? I'm not sure if other people are aware. There's probably some people that might be aware. But a gentleman by the name of Pedro Fernandez de Quiros, looking for Terra Australis, he found at the top end of Australia, which is Vanuatu, in the early 17th century. Many people in the then known world were not sure that Australia existed, except, of course, the indigenous people who lived here, the Aboriginal people, right? So I'm just going to read this little bit here, Bruce. This is, I, Captain Pedro Fernandez de Quiros, hoist this emblem of the Holy Cross on which his, Jesus Christ, was crucified and whereon he gave his life for the ransom and remedy of the human race. On this day of Pentecost, 14th of May, 1606, I take possession of all this part of the south as far as the pole in the name of Jesus. From now on, these islands and lands shall be called the southern land of the Holy Ghost, to the end that all the natives in all the said lands, the holy and sacred evangel, the Christian gospel, may be preached zealously and openly. But de Quiros had not landed in Australia. Instead, he was on the largest island of what would become known as the New Hebrides and is now Vanuatu. However, his proclamation before God, I take possession of this part of the south as far as the pole, the South Pole, in the name of Jesus, including Australia, then known as Terra Australis Incognita, even though he did not know exactly where it was, and the new name he gave it reflected the reason for his journey, La Australia del Espiritu Santo, or the Southland of the Holy Ghost Spirit. So there you go. There's a little bit of history in case people were not aware of that.
More than 400 years.
There you go.
Yep.
There you go.
I knew that the Dutch, I think it was Dampier, had landed on the Western Australian coast, but it was after that. And I often wonder whether the Dutch would look back and ponder whether they'd made a mistake, because apparently Dampier turned up, landed on the coast of Western Australia, looked around and went, nothing here, and sailed off north to Indonesia. So I do wonder whether that might have been a bit of an error.
Yeah, and my good friend John Tate made me aware of that. He had a bit of a flyer made up. He was made aware from someone else, and I just thought it was worth sharing that. Australia was blessed as the holy was blessed back then under Jesus, Bruce. So there you go.
Good on him.
Yes, that's right. Yes, John 8:32, the truth shall set thee free. All right, legend, thank you very much. And thank you for everybody that's been commenting. You made it across from Facebook over to here, which is good, obviously not on there. And thank you for putting up with my my croaky voice, and hopefully I'll be all good for next week. Although Bruce is saying please don't, because otherwise I'll have my half-hour monologue before we get started into his content. But anyway, we'll see how we go. Good on you, legend, as always. God bless you, brother, and hope you enjoy the rest of your week. And to all you fine good people out there, thank you for joining us for over 2 hours on Mondays. Really appreciate it. Appreciate your comments. Appreciate that you're jumping in and sharing your thoughts with us and continuing to join us on our journey. And Bruce, as always, thank you for your time and effort putting all that information together for the betterment of the community, my dear friend.
Thanks for the platform. Thanks for the fellowship.
Yeah. Amen, brother. Amen. Take care, everybody.
To fight again for that already burned, it was driven towards the flames. All the signs are there for all to see, the signs we've lost our way. When we jail our heroes and applaud our villains and turn our hearts away, like a silent choir, too scared to sing the anthem of a braver day. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix. A song our children may never hear, the ballad of Dr. Bruce Paix.